Hey guys, how's it going? Coach Tyson from Ox Strength, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Avancus Apex Power powerlifting shoe. This shoe has been basically the talk of town, especially once I got the shoe. Many of you guys were interested if it was actually worth it, and then also in our older Gen 3 review where I said that's the best flat shoe, everyone was asking if it's better than the Avancus shoe. But then at the time when we filmed that, this shoe was not out yet, and I couldn't give a definitive answer. But yeah, I finally have the shoe. I've worn it for 2 or 3 sessions, and I sort of have a good feel as to how these shoes are compared to the other shoes that I own, and I own quite a few of them. I have some of them here on the table, but then we'll just talk about some of the similarities and how this could be better or worse in certain scenarios. So first impression of the shoe. Usually like powerlifting shoes, whenever we buy them, they're like very flimsy, and it's sort of like a slipper sort of a feel, and the older shoes were not as minimalist in the sense that they're not made for barefoot style training and all of these things. So I think this shoe is very well made because it's almost as thin as a slipper, and then it's really well made. But then the first time when I got these shoes, what I felt like, obviously I took out the insole and threw them away, so I don't know how it would be with the insole, but even without the insole, it felt a bit snug to my feet in comparison to the Vivos or the Notorious Gen 3, which are more of a wide barefoot sort of a shoe. So in terms of sizing, I feel like they're really true to size, but in the case of other slippers and Vivo barefoot style shoes, they run like almost one size big, especially when we want to get like a really snug feel. So normally what I would typically get for a Vivo or a Gen 3 or even the older Notorious would be size 44. But then when I got size 44 for these, my feet were completely touching every single part of the shoe. So that's a really true fit. And then outside of the gym, maybe I would wear a 44.5 or even 45, depending on the shoe. So this is like a true size in terms of sizing, especially if you compare these to the Metcons or your Jordan ones. So they're very similar in size. First thing that I felt about the shoe is like I didn't find them really close to the ground like the Vivos or even any other slippers that I have. So I was worried if I would actually be able to deadlift in them quite nicely. And then also it felt like my feet were almost being pushed more internally because it has so much external lateral support on the outside of it. So it felt like the shoe is naturally more tilted inclined, but then maybe that's just a personal bias. Other than that, it felt like a really well made shoe. It has laces all over, and then the sole is nice and sturdy, which is a rarity in the powerlifting shoes. So that was basically just my first impression without even using the shoe. But then after that, I used it for my first deadlift session, my bench session, and then my squat session. So I'll just basically go over each of the lift and then give you guys a verdict if they're actually worth it for each and every lift, and then how are they in comparison to the other shoes. So my initial bias about a squat shoe was that because earlier on only the flats available were the Notorious lift, and then whenever I was walking out in the squat, right? So whenever I was walking out in the squat and I tried to adjust for my feet, I felt like I wasn't being able to move because the grip is so much more higher on the Notorious compared to my Olympic lifters or my Vivo barefoot shoes. So I thought this would be a similar issue because this grip is pretty much like the Notorious, a bit better in fact. But then I thought like when I walk out, it would be very grippy, and I wouldn't be able to adjust my feet once I set it in. But that's totally not the case because the upper is so stiff that even with the grip I can push it outwards or wherever that I want to set. And then the problem was with the older style of shoe because the upper was not stiff enough, so I wouldn't be able to move nicely freely in the shoe. So that was my first thing that I was worried about, which is totally not the case. Second thing, like the stack height in squat doesn't really matter as long as the shoe is stable, and then it has a wide toe box area. And like I said, maybe because I ordered a size too small, the toe box does not feel as wide as the Notorious or the Vivos. But then I could still squat in them. That's just how I felt initially, because I normally walk around in barefoot style shoes and then just wear more barefoot shoes. So it felt like the toe box area was a bit too small, but then still wider than obviously the slippers for me. And then everything else in the squat felt great. Because I don't have a really extreme wide stance. I feel like I don't need that much more lateral support whenever I'm squatting. So for me in squat, I could rock these, but then I think I personally would still prefer the Gen 3s because it has enough stability. I can move my feet around, but then it's got a wider toe box. And then this shoe is really stable across the board. I think the most stable shoe that I found, but for my case, maybe I could still rock it, but then I still prefer the Gen 3. Moving on, the bench press. Now this is where this shoe starts to really excel, because for the bench press, for me, what I'm looking at the shoe is how low is it to the ground, and then how much of a grip does it have when I'm driving my leg through the floor and try to maintain my upper back position. So my shoe of choice is obviously the Hyper V's. These are not powerlifting shoes, obviously, but then the problem with these shoes were initially that the stack height is really high, and me being slightly on the taller side for the powerlifting bench, I cannot have my feet as low to the ground, and my hips were coming off the bench. So I had to make a lot of modifications to this shoe in order to make it more like a barefoot style shoe. But initially out of the box, this shoe is not that. But then with this shoe, it's already really low to the ground. And then that's the first one, obviously. And then second, the grip is exceptionally good. I would say it is better than all of the powerlifting shoes, the Notorious Lifts, the Vivos, and any other shoe that is available in the market. And I wouldn't really have a problem using this shoe whenever I'm doing the bench press. But with that being said, if I try hard enough, I can make these shoes slip. And then it does slip, whereas the other shoes that I mentioned earlier, it's made for grip, and it's made to have grip in any other areas, any type of surfaces, let it be the carpet, a gym mat, ply. I've never had any issue with these shoes slipping ever, and I can pretty much say that for these as well. But then because that's a shoe made only for grip and it does not have anything else, it's like a really flimsy shoe, and then me removing the insole and everything, it's very not stable shoe. So yeah, this has pretty good grip. Not the best, because there is a shoe that exists, but then for most cases, most people, I would say that this has a really good grip in my opinion. And yeah, overall, I would definitely wear these shoes to bench, especially if it's like a bench and a deadlift day, and I can just rock one shoe and I don't have to keep changing two shoes. So I would personally use it for my secondary or tertiary bench day. But then for my primary, I would still stick to the best shoe that I have available. Other than that, I think for bench, it's a pretty good shoe. Now, talking about deadlifts, and I think where shoes make the absolute most sense, and why I personally look for shoes that would make my deadlift better. Things that I need in a deadlift shoe: lateral support, of course, stack height, and I think those two things are pretty much the biggest concern, because with these shoes, I think they have both of them covered. In terms of stack height, I'm not sure if they're the lowest shoe that I have, because it definitely feels a bit higher, and I think it comes at a cost. Like if you lower the stack height really low, like let's say the Vivos, then the problem is that the sole is not stiff enough that it is stable. And I think similar thing with the older Notorious Gen slippers too. But then as you start to make the shoe more stable, which is also a requirement in the squat and the deadlift, then we start to compromise stack height a little bit more and more every I think every single millimeter accounts to more stability. So I think for me personally, this was a good spot of stability and stack height, because this is already getting higher than the Vivos and the older slippers, in my opinion. But then I feel like when I wear both of these shoes on either of my feet and then try to feel the stack height, it feels like it's slightly even higher than the Notorious Lift. Maybe because the Notorious Lift is broken into, and this also has sort of like a foam, I think, for comfort. on top, so it makes me feel like it's slightly higher, not so much higher, but whenever I wear my older shoes, it feels lower to the ground. But nothing that would affect it so much, but it gives you tremendous stability, and then the lateral support is uncompromised. It's so much so like sometimes I almost feel like it's pulling me inside, but you can drive as much as you can laterally, and then this shoe is not coming off the floor, or it's like flipping over on one side, and it just looks like a really solid and well built shoe. So if you are somebody who thrives off of lateral support, I think this is the best shoe that you can personally have. And one little complaint that I had is it does not have a midfoot strap. Now, it's not something that I really need or prefer, and it's mostly things that the lace can do, but then like to fix the laces and then do it, undo it, because I've had the habit of doing it, undoing it because of the older shoes that I had. It just gives me sort of like a feedback, sort of a feel on my midfoot that, I don't know, it's not going to help so much, but then it just gives a more secure feeling for me, at least, whenever like I'm going for my top set, and then I just get to crank this up just a little bit, and then after the set I can loosen it up a little bit. So that's just something that I miss with these shoes. But I've been rocking these for deadlift, and if anything, this would be the deadlift shoe of choice for me for now, because of the lateral support aspect, and yeah, that's the biggest thing for me. And then I would go back and forth with these two shoes, and then decide which one I would ideally feel better. And for the deadlift, sometimes I feel like, I think I've mentioned it about in the Vivo Barefoot and then even the Notorious Lift review, that the lateral wall is so far away from the shoe inside that I can almost not get any feedback, like giving me any support on the lateral side, because the fabric on the lateral side is like really far away. And then with this shoe I can just feel it, because like I said, it's a very snug feeling shoe. Yeah, I think that would be my final verdict. This is, I think, would be the best shoe for you to deadlift in. Maybe even a bench if you don't have these shoes available to you. And it doesn't make sense for you to buy a shoe just to bench press in, unless and until you need more grip than what this shoe already has. And for most people, I think this would be the perfect shoe. And even for me, it would be, but I already have that shoe, so I'm gonna stick to that. And in terms of squatting, I just feel like maybe there can be made a shoe that can be better, which is flat, and then is better for the squat. But I think this is the best overall powerlifting shoe if you're looking for one. But then for me, I'm probably just going to use them for deadlift, because it really thrives in the deadlift department for me. Alright guys, so that was it for the review of the Avancus Power Apex shoe. And then I hope they're obviously a new company, and it's literally just the first generation of their shoe, and I'm sure like they will be taking feedback from athletes all over the world and then try to make this shoe even better. And yeah, that's been it. Thank you for watching. If you want any templates, coaching from any one of our team members, links are in the description down below. And then until next time, be strong.